Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you out there, no matter who you are, where you are, or what you're doing. This is episode 2 of The Journey Within, and once again I'm here with Gareth Davies to discuss fear and change. Hello Gareth, how are you today?
Hey Venerina, how's it going? Fear, I like that. Well,
yes.
When I say I like it, I don't like fear, but I like the topic.
It's a great topic, isn't it?
It is,
Perhaps we should learn a little bit more about fear before we start talking about it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've always thought fear was like, you know, when you watch a scary movie or something. But it's something more than that, huh?
It goes a lot deeper than that, yes. And we're all affected by it.
We're all affected by fear. Okay. Well, let's learn a little bit about fear.
Fear only exists because we don't know how we'll react to something or how we'll deal with a situation. The very nature of fear is to foresee the worst that could possibly happen. That doesn't mean to say in reality that it will happen. This very fear is what stops us from taking risks, changing and moving forward. Yet the only real threat to us and our lives is the fear of fear itself. The only way to eliminate fear is to face it full on and see it for what it is.
To face it full on.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit. I mean, fear of change, right? You know, changing of your lifestyle, your living condition, your job, your income. All of these things have fear associated with them. It's fear of the unknown. You know, you could make a change in your life, and it might be the greatest thing you've ever done ever, or an absolute nightmare.
Absolutely, but human nature is to actually think it's going to be a nightmare before it's even happened, because what we tend to do as humans is put the cart before the horse, so to speak. And so, you know, actually going back to when we're children are completely fearless. Have you ever noticed that? They'll climb trees, they'll get stuck.
Yeah.
They'll jump in a pond without knowing how to swim. They don't care about the consequences.
Yeah.
They just go ahead, full on, and they do it anyway.
Right.
But as adults, we've been corrupt by the hurt in the world, by our disappointments, our disillusions, by our failures. And instead of kind of moving past those, we hold on to them, and then we let them hold us back. And we think, instead of thinking, oh, I'll go and climb the tree and suffer the consequences, we kind of think, what if I get stuck? What if I can't get down? Who's going to help me? How am I going to get down? What if I'm there for days? And
it's like this kind of self-preservation thing, right? I mean, the example of climbing the tree, while, you know, climbing the tree might be a lot of fun and you get up a good view of everything, you'll be high up, might be wonderful, but you might fall and break your leg. And you kind of balance, well, the view from the top is great, but breaking my leg would be a lot worse than seeing a great view, so maybe I just won't do it.
Absolutely, but who's to say that you're going to break your leg?
Well, exactly. Chances are you probably won't, but the element is there that it's a possibility. So you try and avoid that painful possibility, even though it might never happen.
Absolutely. And how many times in life have you or I or any of our listeners out there actually had or allowed other people's projections of fears to be assimilated into our own thinking? I mean, sometimes, have you ever found that you fear something that you think, well, that's not actually my fear? I'll give you an example. When I was growing up in Sicily, there was a lot of fear of people who were from Morocco, for example, and you were never allowed to talk to a Moroccan because, but it wasn't a Moroccan. It wasn't the fact that the person was Moroccan. It was just, you don't talk to those people because they sell things on the beach, And then as I was growing up, I started talking to them and I really got to like them, They were friendly and so that fear for me was eliminated. But that initial step between talking to somebody and not talking to them wasn't my fear. Yeah. And you may have other examples.
The thing that you mentioned right there. I mean, in the past, I've met people that I've instantly disliked, and I haven't liked them at all. But as soon as there's like a crack where you kind of get to know them a little bit, your dislike will kind of go away.
Absolutely. And how many people have you heard of that are afraid to drive a car because, their neighbors had an accident. So they don't want to drive a car because they're afraid of it. So that's not actually their own fear because they've never been in a car. They've never experienced what it is to drive. They've never been in traffic. And so, but their fear has been a projection of somebody else's fear.
Yeah. Well, the whole airline thing, too, is a lot of people that won't fly simply because, they've heard so many horror stories of plane crashes and stuff. So they're like...
Absolutely.
They're terrified.
And yet, do you know that the probability or the possibility of anybody being in a plane crash is like nil compared to a car crash?
Yeah, it's very slim. You're absolutely right. I mean, the amount of people that die in car wrecks compared to the amount of people that die... in planes, it's night and day. It's a huge difference,
Absolutely. Yeah. So here we are, these grown adults. We have all this extra knowledge that we've accumulated from our experiences, and yet we seem to use it in a damaging way that holds us back, and then it becomes frustrating, and then we become unhappy, and then we start to blame everything around us. We start to blame people around us.
You're right. We absolutely do those things, and everyone goes through those periods in their life where they're scared to do something because of the negative consequences that may or may not happen. But isn't it more like of a self-preservation kind of feeling? It's a kind of a survival technique, right? You don't walk on the edge of the cliff because you might fall. I mean, you might not, but you might, so you don't walk there.
Absolutely. It is a way of self-preserving. It's a way of keeping out of danger, like you were saying.
Yeah.
But in some cases, it actually holds us back. If you're talking about people who have goals or they have dreams, if we talk about fear in this context, then it's not a beneficial thing, if you like, for human beings. Of course, if our safety depends on it, then yes, fear is good. I mean, a little bit of fear if you're paragliding is a good thing to have because you're going to be more careful about, where you're going.
Yeah. So it's like you don't want to let this survival instinct work against you. You don't want it to destroy your life. And what's that old saying? The only thing to fear is fear itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's my favorite saying.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think that a lot of fear is actually misplaced. I think that, because of this projection of other people's fears, I think that we're misinformed. We're not informed enough. If we fear something so much, it boils down to just not knowing enough about it, doesn't it, really? Mm. Because if you know enough about something, if you're informed about it, if you have all the data, then you have less to fear, don't you?
Right. And they always say, the more information you have, the better decision you can make. If it's like I say, you use the jumping off the cliff thing again, right? If you're jumping off a cliff and there's water below that, or a big pile of fluffy pillows, right? Then you might want to jump.
Absolutely.
But it's all based on your knowledge. It's. Do you know that is there water or fluffy pillows below there, or are there jagged rocks? You don't know. But if you had that information, it could inform you as to which way to proceed. And in life, a lot of it's like that. You don't have all the information, right? If you did, it would be easier to make these decisions.
Absolutely. I think as you're saying that, another thing that leads into this fear concept is people leaving the comfort of their safety zone to take risks. That's what people fear, is the taking risks part more, I think, because you have such a thing, as you were saying, of calculated risks. Yeah. If you've got big fluffy pillows at the end of the cliff, at the end of the drop of the cliff, then you're going to jump. There's no danger. But if it's an uncalculated risk, well, are the pillars going to be taken away, or is there going to be rock? Then that's not so calculated. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's something I think that everyone struggles with, But I think you're very right when you mention your comfort zone. We all get to a part of our life, and I guess multiple parts in our lives where we're comfortable and where we're content. But what I found, and maybe you can elaborate on this, is that when you're in that zone, that comfort zone, when you are comfortable and content, stagnation sets in. I found this especially in employment situations where you're working in a job or whatever, and you found your niche, and you've kind of plateaued, and you're comfortable. You can do the job easily, and you're right there, and you're good to go. Well, you're going to be there forever unless you kind of push yourself to break out of that comfort zone. So the way I look at it, and I really want you to elaborate on this if possible, is the comfort zone is, I mean, it's great when you're in it, right? But for growth to occur, mentally, physically, and spiritually, you have to kind of constantly throughout your life break out of that comfort zone.
Absolutely. We're creatures of habit. That's the problem, I think, with a lot of human beings. We tend to stick with what we know. We tend to stay where we feel safe. We tend to take on jobs that are easy or easy-ish, that we can, we learn inside out and we stay there. In this day and age, a lot of people are reluctant to give up their jobs or even change their jobs because of, the world's talking about crisis at the moment. And I think that I think what's going on in society also at the moment is forcing us a little bit to be in that comfort zone, to stay where we are, to stay stagnant. And I mean, not everybody's going to stay stagnant. So I think these times like this are excellent for growth and opportunity, for developing oneself. But you're absolutely right. The comfort zone it's like territorial, isn't it? It's like, every corner of the house, or every corner of where you live. It's going to take you 15 minutes to work and back, so you've got extra time to do whatever you want. It's all these little things that we're reluctant to change because we just grow comfortable. And I hate to say this, but we're spoilt. Yeah. Is that the right word, maybe? We're spoilt.
I hear what you're saying. But it's a little bit like, I don't know, somebody working in, I guess, a low-paying job that they can do very well, and they're probably a very smart individual who could probably go a lot further in life, but they found something that's comfortable.
Yeah,
and they don't want to change it. You know what I mean?
Do you not think, though, that sometimes people fear success?
Oh, yeah.
I know this sounds crazy. Everybody, wants to be more successful. They want to have better things. They want to do better. I think everybody at some point has some kind of dream in life.
Sure.
And yet for some, there is that fear of success. They don't know what's going to come with success. Yeah. I'm not saying they're afraid of the hard work, but when they get into that, like you said, they're in an easy job. It's an easy paycheck. All of a sudden it becomes hard to think of moving out of that, to do something better, to put more effort into it. And not that they lack the interest to put more effort into it, but they suddenly, it's like if you're at work and you don't have a client all day, you're working in a shop and nobody comes in all day. When that one client comes in, you're kind of like, oh God, why are they bothering me now? Don't you? Because you literally get into that lazy, go along, cool, everything's fine. And then somebody comes in and they've interrupted your peace and quiet altogether. And you're almost, you're really grateful for the client, but you're kind of like, God, you're really, you shouldn't be here.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's in some respects, having a really frantic, busy day, it's a lot better than having a slow kind of kickback day.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, if you're real busy and you're involved and you're into it, you're kind of you're ready to go.
Absolutely, and then you can fire clients in and out one after the other because you're really happy and you're going.
Right, but if you're staring at the wall for half the day and then someone comes in, then you're like, ugh, yes, what?
Yeah, the door's over there. Yes, that does happen. Now, there's another kind of fear as well, as we're on the topic for a moment or two more.
Yeah.
How about guided fear?
Ooh.
The fear where we allow the media to set us up with fear.
Yeah.
You know, this is one of my favorite ones. They, you know, consciously or subconsciously, the media implants seeds into our minds every single day with images we see, with words we hear, with events happening in the world. And for me, they're the biggest culprits of fear-mongering among people. And I noticed the effects of this, especially in tourism, because, as you know, one of my jobs is working with hotels and in tourism.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see over the last couple of years how the trend in tourism has changed. You know, people who were going to certain parts of the world on holiday have now reversed over to the other side of the world. And it's not necessarily because there's danger in the original part where they used to go, but it's because this fear of danger has been implanted in people's minds.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's I mean, there's certain areas of the world where people, you know, there's no way I'm going there, right? And, you know, for a number of reasons, but mainly fear-based because of what the media is telling them. The thing that pops into my head immediately is like the Middle East.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
It's like this. What the hell am I going to go there for? You know, you're out of your mind. You know,
well, one perfect example was when the trouble started in Egypt, the big tour operators suddenly pulled out of Egypt and they were sending all their clients here to Madeira, or most of them. But they weren't even giving people the option of going to Egypt. I mean, in Sharm el-Sheikh, there was nothing. The protests were only in Cairo. So why couldn't people have gone to Sharm el-Sheikh? But that's not the point. It's just the point is the fear that has been planted in somebody's mind. And how many times has it happened maybe with, I don't know, with a specific product, a food product or something? You know, you can't eat eggs because they contain salmonella.
Right.
Well, a proportion of eggs may have contained salmonella, but that doesn't mean to say all eggs have salmonella.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's that kind of fear, but then it guides public opinion. And for a whole, 6 months or something, people steer clear of eggs.
Yeah.
So they're being guided by this manipulation of the concept of fear, isn't it, really? That the media are putting out.
When these companies inform the media that something's up with their eggs, and they then pass the information to us via the news, they know the repercussions. They know what's going to happen, but they still do it. Now, sometimes they do it because there's a legitimate concern. A sizable amount of eggs or beef or whatever the case may be is infected, and they want to nip it in the bud to avoid huge lawsuits somewhere down the line, right? Sometimes it's legitimate, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's done to suit other needs.
Absolutely. I mean, if we go into who's behind paying for the research for some of these companies, I'm not talking about the salmonella case, but there are cases of research, say, into tobacco, smoking. They do research in smoking, or they do research into water. The latest research I heard about was, you're going to laugh at it. You're going to love this one. Yeah. The latest piece of research I read said that there is no water in water.
What?
Yeah, I'll pass you the article for that one day, but there is no water in water.
Oh, God.
Okay, and they have banned, I'm not sure where it is in the world, but water companies and bottled water companies are banned, are prohibited from saying that water alleviates dehydration or something to that effect, because there is no water in water. How stupid is that?
That's bizarre. It's like that old joke, instant water, just add water. It's like...
It's absolutely crazy, though, isn't it? There's no water in water, and water cannot alleviate dehydration.
I don't know what to say about that. That's pretty bizarre. Yeah. I don't know.
But anyway, right,
fear.
Coming back to fear, the one thing I think people fear the most is change.
Change.
Many people fear change. It doesn't matter what kind of change. For many, change equates to embarking into the unknown, and people fear the unknown. Change forces us to leave what we recognize as safe. With change, We have to abandon our comfort zone and learn to take risks, and that scares many people. Yet change is an indispensable part of life. Without change, there is no progress. Without progress, we do not move forward, and we might not learn anything. So in reality, we should learn to embrace change. Change comes to all of us, and sometimes if we don't change, it's forced upon us.
So change comes to all of us. It's inevitable. You know, certain things in your life are going to change, whether you want it to or not. It's going to happen. Whether you make the change or somebody or something around you will make the change for you, it's coming.
Absolutely.
Right? And they always say, well, you know, change is a good thing. But usually while it's happening, and especially if it's something that you're not creating, it doesn't feel good.
Well, this is why I say that sometimes we have to make the change or it's forced upon us. And, excuse me, when it's forced upon us, it's absolutely, as you say, it doesn't seem pleasant. Yeah. It doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem right.
Right.
We tend to not see the positive aspects in it until maybe months, years, or decades down the line. We don't understand why it's happening. Now, we could talk about predestined fate. We could talk about, you know, the path of life that we're all on. And we get to a certain point where if we're going down the wrong road, the universe has a way of coming around and showing us that we need to get back onto a certain road. The best thing is to learn, I think, to know when change needs to happen.
Now, that's a good point. For me, when I've initiated change in my life, I've always done so with a feeling. And what I mean by that is when it feels like it's the right thing to do, you should do it.
Yeah, the little voice within.
Right, when it
intuition.
feels that way. Or if you think, oh, I'm going to do this, and the feeling is, no, don't do it. Please stop right now. So when you get that negative voice, is that fear? Or is your subconscious or something else literally telling you, you know what, don't go down this path. There's going to be problems.
I think that depends, and I think that we all receive signs. If we start thinking, I mean, sometimes it can be fear, can't it, saying, no, don't do that because we don't want to move out of the comfort zone. So that little, you know, the little devil sat on the shoulder who likes to be in the comfort zone says, no, don't do that. But there are times when we think, no, don't do that, and yet something happens that makes us truly believe that that is the right path.
Well, let me give you an example. Several months ago, I was working in a job that I hated. And I despised going to work every day. It was an absolute nightmare. And every fiber of my being was telling me, you need to get out of here. Quit. Leave. Get out.
Right.
But another voice was telling me, what, are you crazy? You're making good money. The job's not hard. It's easy. You can do this. You know, what do you want to leave for? This is nuts. Right? You know what I mean?
Oh, I know what you mean.
All right, you know, and I got a family, you know, and we need money and, you know, all that stuff. But it got to the point where I was just like, I quit. and it was the stupidest, most wonderful thing I've ever done. I quit my job. I basically went into the boss and told him to go F himself. And I left, and with no other job lined up, nothing, just quit, right? And that's when you think about it, I mean, that's insane. Why would you do that? You know what I mean? But it worked out wonderfully.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I absolutely know what you mean. Yeah, and that's why I say sometimes it's for the better and not for the worst. Maybe, I mean, if you were going to, there are things that I've been trying for a long time, but everything I've tried, there's been an obstacle in my way and a door's been shut in my face. So that I see as a signal of not my fears telling me that it's the wrong path, but even the universe telling me it's the wrong path. And yet there are other things that I'm trying in life where the door opens on its own, kind of thing, even if it's, you know, even if I think that's maybe not the right way or the easiest way. In fact, I think it's the craziest way, if that makes sense. But everything in the universe aligns up with your actions.
So, I think what you're saying is sometimes change is easy. Sometimes change happens without you even initiating it. It's just things just fall into place naturally without, and it just kind of, it's like, you know, it's like blocks falling in front of you, like, you know, the path appearing, and you just, oh, I'm going to walk this way today. And it just happens, and it could be an enormous change, but it was easy. You know, could it be?
I don't think anything. I don't think any change is really easy.
Well, I don't because there's been a few moments in my life where things. I mean, looking back, I mean, I'm like, man, that was like huge. But at the time, it wasn't a big deal at all. And then other times, you know, the even minute changes, which looking back, you're like, that was, you know, why were you getting so bent out of shape about that? That was nothing. But at the time, it was like, you know, end of the world kind of situations. But in reality, it was nothing. Absolutely.
But don't you think that is more to do with the choices you have to make, and the fact that some choices seem harder than others when they could be simple choices. You know, we tend to build mountains out of molehills, don't we? So the easier the choice, the more difficult the decision.
Right.
And the more difficult the choice, the easier the decision.
That would make sense, yeah.
Because the bigger the event, the more we say, oh, well, to hell with it, let's just go for it. You know, we just close our eyes and jump.
Yeah.
And let's hope there's pillows at the bottom. But when it's smaller decisions or smaller choices, then the decision becomes harder because you start thinking like you did with your job. How am I going to support my family? I need money. This is a good job. Will I get another job?
Yeah.
And all these things go through our heads, and we turn them into these, instead of trusting maybe like a bit more in the universe.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, something will come along. We have this fear, again, of putting the cart before the horse. Will I get a job? Where will I live? How will I live? How will I support myself?
Yep. Exactly. And I spoke to somebody a few weeks ago who was in a very similar situation. You know, they were working in a job that they despised, but they kept working there because, you know, obviously you need money to put food on the table and a roof over your head.
That's right. That's right.
And I said, you know what, you should just find something else or quit or, you know, get out of there. You know, why are you making your life miserable? And he's like, well, you know, I need the money and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, so do you honestly think that if you quit your job, that's it? You're never going to work again? And he's like, no. I'm like, well, what's the problem?
Yeah.
You know,
I bring that down as well to a little bit of lack of creativity on people's behalf, you know, because it's a big step to leave a job. If we're going to talk about leaving a job,
yeah.
But it's an even bigger step for somebody who's been employed for somebody else to stop and think, well, what am I going to do next? And to be creative about it.
Yeah.
I've been asked millions of times, what would I do if I wasn't working where I'm working? And my reply is always the same. I'll invent something. You know, just because I've been doing something or just because somebody knows me for doing something for X amount of years doesn't mean that I'm not capable of doing something else. It doesn't mean that I can't reinvent myself, reinvent my skills, brush up my skills and invent something.
Yeah.
I think we're too programmed to look at things in a very unilinear way instead of in a broad scope way, if you like,
so,
you know.
I mean, we've talked about two topics today. We've talked about fear and we've talked about change. And these two topics go kind of hand in hand with each other. But we've also talked about fear and change in the kind of five-sense reality. In physical reality, change can be very difficult. But why is change and growth important?
Because if we don't change, if we don't move forward, if we don't challenge ourselves, we stop ourselves from knowing ourselves first and foremost, because I said this in the last podcast we did. I had a very, very bad accident. Now, when that accident happened, I didn't know I could survive on my own, injured in the wild. I never thought that I had survival skills. So I learned that about myself. But that also changed me because it made me study natural medicine. So, then I found that I was interested in natural medicine. So apart from, and that has been beneficial then to other people because I became a therapist and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's these little things that, the change makes us move forward. We begin to see things in different light. We learn more about ourselves, about others, about the environment around us.
Basically, and please jump in here and correct me if I'm way off, but it's like, the person that you are today, if you were to go back and meet yourself in the past as a much younger person, it would be two completely different people.
Definitely.
Right? You'd have, different points of view, different thoughts. So much water had gone under the bridge between then and now. You've learned so much, and you're only going to learn so much. Learn that those lessons and those things by growing, and you're only going to grow by changing, right? By embracing change, and by embracing change, there's also fear.
Absolutely, but it's only facing those fears that we learn to trust as well, I think. For example, you upped and moved from the UK to the US. That must have been a major change in your life. Well, it was an enormous risk.
It was a huge change in my life. But, it was, I kind of alluded to that a few minutes ago. It was one of those things when I look back on it thinking, wow, that was huge. But at the time, it didn't seem a
big deal.
It didn't seem a big deal at all. It was just like, oh, here's an opportunity. Cool.
But how old were you then, Gareth?
I was 23.
Excellent. So if you were to change now, if you were to uproot now, okay, as it is, you've got a family, children, so you're going to move now.
Yeah.
How would you react to that change now?
It would be pretty huge. It would be off the charts.
But even though it would be pretty huge and off the charts, you would see it in a different light, wouldn't you?
Absolutely,
as opposed to somebody who's never moved before in their life, because you'll be thinking, well, I did it from UK to the States, so I know that I have to do this and I have to do that. So you've learnt, you've grown as a person. You're better equipped to deal with the situation before you, aren't you?
In some ways, yeah, and in other ways, I don't know. When I was that young, I was very naive, and I don't know. It was like I've said this before on other podcasts. It was like for the first 20, 25 years of my life, maybe 30 years of my life, I was in like a fog. I was in like a mist constantly, And it was only as I got older, the mist started to clear, and I started to see things more clearly. And I would assume most people have those periods in their lives where they're not really seeing things for what they really are. And I don't know, maybe at that time in my life, that move and that change, it wasn't that traumatic for me, because I don't see. It was just like I'm going with the flow kind of thing. I'm not really seeing the big picture or seeing things clearly. Do you see what I mean?
But don't you think that worked in your favour?
Oh, yeah,
because if you put the cart before the horse and you saw the fears of everything, this huge move, you would never have gone, would you?
Probably not. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I probably would not have. And it's a scary thought to me too, because I keep thinking, if I'd never left, if I hadn't have made that huge leap, what would my life be like now? And I don't think it would be nearly as much fun as it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I say sometimes fears hold us back with all the good information that we have in the world.
Yeah.
Like you said, the biggest fear of fear is fear itself, or fearing fear itself. And I think like I said in the phrase, we should learn to embrace change. We should learn to embrace our fears, face them, face on. Brian Tracy used to say he used to say this beautiful thing, which was, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm unemployed. So what's the worst that could happen if you're unemployed? I'm not earning any money. What's the worst that could happen? Okay, I can't afford to rent. So if you can't afford to rent, where are you going to live? Oh, I'll sleep out in my car for a few days.
Yeah.
And if you keep going down this path of what's the worst that could happen, nothing is the worst that could happen. I'm afraid, not even death is the worst that could happen. But if you reduce things down to their minimal basics, then make it manageable,
Basically, what you're trying to say is, regardless of where you are in life, regardless of what's happening, you got nothing to lose.
By trying.
You got
Absolutely.
nothing to lose. You're born into this life alone, and you die alone.
Absolutely.
So what's the problem? Get on with it.
Yeah, that's a great thing, isn't it? We can tell our listeners, hey, get on with it.
What's the big deal? But I mean, obviously, that's easier said than done, right? I mean, there's a lot of emotional and psychological baggage that's stuffed into your head that kind of puts the brakes on. But when you, like you said, when you do break it down, you got nothing to lose.
If you don't try, you'll never know. But isn't it better to try, to fail, to learn, and to not die thinking, I wish I had?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Gareth, I think we should wrap it up for this week. What do you say?
I would agree. Another great episode. Thank you, Venerina. It's been awesome.
Thank you very much for coming along again, Gareth. And to all our listeners out there, just go for it. Take care. Until next time, it's The Journey Within.
Bye-bye.